All right, gang. Well, welcome. My name's Rob Nolan. Welcome to another night with the motorcycle community. We're here at the Edge Power Sports. Giving you a little rundown on some of the two-stroke nuances and some maintenance things that we need to pay attention to so we all have a good ride out there. So let's kind of start with some of the basics. If we take a look at this little rascal here, some of the things you want to maintain on your motorcycle right off the bat. First thing you want to take a look at is your spark plug. Now I've already kind of pre-loosened this, so typically your spark plug isn't going to be this loose. So you do want to take your spark plug out, take a look at it, see what kind of burn you're getting on it. If it's really oily or wet, it's definitely time to change that plug out. That's just going to give you some running issues, a little stalling, hard to start. So get your plug popped out, take a good look at it, and I'll give you a nice little example of this one. This is the first time I've seen this one. And this one's actually not burning too bad. It's a nice dovetail gray. It's not very wet. Usually if they're black and all sooted out, you're definitely going to have some running issues on this thing. So also you can get a good idea on how your bike is running tuning wise just by the color of the plug. If it's really white, you're definitely running too lean. You can burn some cylinders out and definitely cause some extra expense on that end of it. A little tip on when you are removing your spark plug. If you do have a deep set spark plug hole, I would definitely recommend blowing that out with some air. We've been playing out in the dirt, all the mud and the gunk. Sometimes that sediment can get down in your spark plug hole, and the first thing you do is pull that plug out and it's going to drop all that right down into your piston and your cylinder area. So take a little air hose, blow all that out before you pull your spark plug, and then you're going to be a lot safer off. One of the main things that we do here when we get a unit in, if it's a two-stroke, is we'll actually do a compression test on it to verify where the compression is on it. That's going to be a good telltale factor on how much compression you've got in your system, let you know if it's time to do a top end on that piston. Nice thing about two-strokes is they're pretty much a forever engine, so as long as you can keep the top ends happy on it, keep fresh oil in the transmission, these things will last you a lifetime. You'll end up giving them to your kids and they'll have a good time on them. Let me show you an example of a worn out piston. I've got one over on my bench here. Let me just snag one up really quick. So these are the kind of things you're going to run into on a worn piston. A lot of scoring on the piston sides. This is also happening in your piston walls. Rings start going south. Even your connecting rod bearings can get a little seized up, or they can start getting a lot of play in them. So this is definitely an example of a tired, worn out unit, and it's time to get this done. This, you can see there was actually some wear and tear, some scoring on the cylinder wall itself. So unfortunately, this client actually had to have their cylinder sent out and have that whole cylinder refurbished to where we can start anew and get them rocking and rolling again. So things to take care of on that. If you keep up on fresh air filters, that's going to keep things happy. This air filter, I haven't looked at it. This one's marginal. It's not too bad. It's not the end of the world. It definitely could be cleaner. This would be something that I would clean after a ride. So this looks like it's maybe got about a ride on it. Definitely take it out, clean it, get it ready for the next ride, and then you're going to be a lot happier than that. I kind of treat it as an analogy as would someone like to be running a marathon with their face stuck in a bowl of sand? When you don't clean your air filter, that's basically what you're asking your machine to do. Cuts the life down on your cylinder and definitely takes some of that fun time away. So keep up on the air filters. Fresh oil, we definitely want to keep up on our oil on that. And buy quality oil. Don't just buy something from some no-name brand or something that you're not really recognizing the name on. Get a good quality oil, and that's going to keep the engine and transmission working properly for you. That way you don't have any issues on that. A typical oil change that you're going to be doing on most of your two-strokes is anywhere from about 5 to 8 hours. If you're running competition, personally I change mine after every race weekend. Make sure I get that filter cleaned out as well. Okay. As far as doing your top ends, a lot of the smaller CC bikes, you're going to be looking on a regular interval at about every 40 hours. You want to redo the top end, new piston, new rings in that. Maybe a little ball hone in the cylinder walls itself just to get some of that glazing taken care of, and then you're good to start back fresh again. On some of the bigger bikes, typically you're seeing about every 60 to 80 hours on those, depending on the brand. I know some motorcycles, if you treat them really mellow and you're just kind of putting around doing some lighter trail riding, you can get near 100. I've even seen 200 hours on some of the two strokes, which is pretty stretched out quite a bit, but obviously that client was taking care of their machine quite a bit. So it's kind of subjective on how hard you ride your bike, on how soon you have to do those top ends. So one thing I would really recommend doing every time you do a service on it, do a compression test on it. If you don't have a compression tester, I'll show you an example of one that I've got. There's a lot of them out there. There's some cheap ones, there's some expensive ones. This is actually your compression tester right here. So basically you just take this little probe right here, this one screws into where the spark plug goes, then you're going to connect your compression tester. If you've never done a compression test, the trick is, after you've got that all assembled and it's screwed into the cylinder head, you want to have the throttle wide open when you're kicking it. Okay, if you have the throttle closed, that's going to give you a false reading. That's not going to give you the proper compression rating on your piston. So wide open on the throttle, give it a bunch of kicks, wait for that needle to max out on the gauge. Once it's maxed out as much as you're kicking it, that's going to be your compression reading right there. Okay, so definitely recommend doing a compression test. Some things that I come across that are just kind of fluky on motorcycles, I've had clients come in to where they've replaced their entire wiring harnesses, they've replaced their spark plugs, they've replaced the stator for the electrical system itself, and they still can't get the bike to fire up. It still doesn't have any spark. Unfortunately, it was this little kill button right here. It was just a faulty kill button, and that's actually what was causing the whole issue. So if you are having these issues and you're not quite sure with what's going on with the electrical, definitely bring it into a solid, reputable dealer. They can go through your system, let you know on it. That client ended up spending about $1,200 where it could have been a $20 part. So definitely, like I recommend, bring the bike in if you're not familiar with the system, and we can get you set up on that. Or one of your local dealers that you're familiar with, they can definitely help you out on that. It can save you a lot of time and money and just a lot of headaches. And the benefit is it'll get you out playing a little earlier on that as well. Okay. Some things you want to look for around the cylinder head. Look for any leaks. If you start seeing any fluid coming around here, that means some of your cylinder head bolts are coming loose, and you want to make sure those are torqued properly. These do have all torque specs on them. Every manufacturer has proper torque specs that you want to go by. So if you're doing your own work on your cylinders, get into your specs, see what your torque specs are, and that way you can get those set up properly. All right. One of the biggies that can cause a lot of grief as well, a lot of people think it's all up here, right in the piston and the cylinder area. Sometimes it's your muffler. Okay, these things can get clogged up really quick. Some of your major silencer manufacturers, they actually recommend about every 15 to 20 hours to repack the mufflers on those. What happens is all that oil will accumulate up into your silencer here, and it'll actually oil pack all that, and then your bike gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and then finally your neighbors don't want to listen to you ripping by the campsite. So I can show you an example of some really fouled out material. This material actually came out of this bike right here, and it was loud as snot. Every time you'd rip by it on the bike, it was just painful to even listen to. So the client brought it in, said it was really noisy. It was a little flighty up on the top end of the RPM range. So if we look in there, we can see how oil packed all that is. You can actually see all that oil is just completely packed all that material right there. So example of fresh material. Is this right here. So this is brand new material. That's actually what I installed into that unit. A lot of your silencers, you can either physically take them apart, or sometimes they're riveted together. So you do have to pull the rivets out just by drilling them out. Then you can reinstall new rivets after you've pulled the entire system apart, and then you can get it repacked as well. One of the issues that I did come across on this particular unit as well, on the silencer systems, this tube actually runs right in the center of the housing itself. Now there's little teeny holes that are all through that entire tube right there. Well, after some time, those holes will actually get completely packed in with burnt up oil, and it just gets dry and crusty, and then it's just basically a straight pipe coming through. It's not even baffling through any of the material that you've put in there. That particular unit, when I pulled it apart, I actually had to take it and pressure wash it out because it was just so built up I couldn't get it scrubbed out by hand, so I actually had to pressure wash that unit out to where it opened up all those ports. Bike is nice and happy now. It's pleasant to listen to, performs really good. Clog systems can actually cause you a no start or no run issue as well. So if you're curious, maybe get your silencer out there, maybe blow it like a bugle, see if it's blowing through there. Sometimes your expansion canister as well can get filled up with fluid. So it's a good idea to make sure those are flushed out. You don't have anything flowing around in there. I have seen those actually get so hot with fluid in them, they actually start torching up a little bit and cause issues there. But so make sure your entire exhaust system is cleared out, okay? Definitely find out what your intervals are on repacking those silencers as well. Like I mentioned, some manufacturers recommend about 15 to 20 hours, but look in your owner's manual, or if you've got an aftermarket one, get a hold of that manufacturer. They can definitely tell you what the interval is for that as well, okay? If you don't have the tools, I know any local motorcycle shop can definitely help you out on getting those rivets drilled out, repack it for you, and then get you back on the road as well.